So the chapter that me and Tyler chose to present today was chapter 7, which is social class in Canada. Today's agenda, we just want to go over what is social status within Canada, how is poverty defined in Canada, power and how it's defined, as well as class structure in Canada. So just to start off, we have social status. Now, a social class in Canada is based on a person's income, wealth, power, and prestige. So these four things make up the social these four things right here will depict what status or what social status you fall under. For example, if you have a high amount of income, that's when you're considered wealthy, so then you would be put up in the upper elite status. And same thing, if you have power, that puts you up in the upper elite status as well. And prestige, which is basically the honor that your job brings to you, that puts you up as well. So basically, wherever you lie within these four categories, or if what you have is within these four categories, it will depict where you lie on your social status. Right? And you know the basic definition: income is the money received for the work that you do. Wealth is all of the material possessions that you currently own. The power is your ability to carry out your will and impose it on others. So basically, for power, it's just how well people will listen to you based on where you stand. And prestige is the level of esteem associated with one's status or social standing. Now, in Canada, we have categorized six social classes, which is the upper elite class, upper middle class, working class, lower class, and underclass. Now, the upper elite class is a very small handful of people because it's very hard to get into this class. It's basically made up of some of the wealthiest people within Canada, or sometimes, if you want to have a broader spectrum, the richest people within the world. So these are people who have a very high income, they have a gross amount of wealth, they have a lot of prestige, and as well, they have a lot of power because of having the wealth and the income. Then you have the upper middle class, which is not quite like the elite, so they're not at the top with the elite, but they fall one under. And these are people that, again, are members of the society with a high income, high amount of wealth, not as much or not enough to call themselves upper elite, but just enough to become middle class citizens. So it's called upper middle because you're not in the middle class and you're not in the upper class, but you're just one under. And these people are generally well educated, but unfortunately they don't make enough to belong to the elite class. So under your middle class, then you have under your upper middle class, then you have your middle class, which consists of those who have moderate income. So these are your everyday regular people who work your day-to-day salary jobs. They're fairly educated. They normally have a diploma or some sort of higher ended education. Now, once again, they don't get to be in the upper middle class, nor do they get to be in the elite class because they don't even come close to any of those categories. So the middle class people is generally your normal people. They're more, I wouldn't say normal, my bad. Your middle class people are your more well off set. So like per se, you always have that one friend who they're not exactly struggling, but they're just well off. They're not rich, they're not poor, but they're kind of just in the middle with the money. Then you have your working class, which is generally made of people with high school diplomas. Those are can also be college students or even anyone looking for a job basically is in the working class. Because these are people they don't have a very high level of education. They have pretty much the basics. They work not on a salary basis but more on an hourly basis. So like you get paid $11 an hour, 12, 15, whatever it may be, you get paid by the hourly basis. So that's the working class. And these jobs generally consist of jobs like, I don't know, your McDonald's, fast food, retail, any hourly paying job basically in a sense. Then you have your lower class people, which is people who are living in poverty. So it's not that they're not working, but the job they're working is at such a low level that it consistently keeps them in poverty. So that's your lower class. Now, for lower class people, there's no specific job per se to say well that would put them in that class, but it's just the fact that you're not making enough to keep up with your bills and you're not making enough to keep a steady income, so it kind of puts you into a poverty line almost. This can be a lot of people in our society today, as we know, because you know a lot of people are currently struggling right now, especially with the recession hitting, and it's taking a lot of people from the working class and throwing them into the lower class. So you know, it's generally the lower class is always fluctuating. It's never one set or one cast of people. And then there's the underclass. That's completely homeless. So that's without a job, no home, no nothing, no wealth, no income, no prestige, no power basically. So they're very very bottom, right? And again, being within these social classes, it you will always fluctuate because like I said, for example, the recession moved a lot of middle class people down to lower class people, right? Completely past working class and went right to lower class because a lot of people, when the recession hit, lost jobs. Once that job loss was made, it just provided them the poverty because once they didn't have an income, they had to reduce, they had to go down, and there's only so much you can reduce before it's all done. So these six classes here, we all filter through it at some point, and again, these six classes are never set in stone. So again, you could be in the upper elite class one day, but based on an economical flux, you could end up going down a rank. It's kind of like what are they called? What are they called? Oh, I forgot the name. Um, it's kind of like stocks. One day the stock is up and it's really good, and then the next day stock is gone. So yeah. Income distribution. So Statistics Canada performs an annual survey. That's what the that sorry. Yeah, it provides an annual survey of Canadian households that measures the distribution of the income. Households are listed from poorest to richest and divided into five groups called quintiles. These statistics have proven that if you make a low income, you will only make a lower sorry yeah, if you make a low income, you will only make a lower, and if you are making a wealthy income, you could become even more wealthy. This is referred to as income trends. So based on that statement there, that wasn't just pulled out of the blue. Statistic Canada, once again, they do their annual surveys every year for every household to look at the income bias and see how exactly it works. And basically what I pulled out from the text, from what Pearson was saying and what Statistic Canada was saying, was that if you started off the year by a low income, chances are that income's only going to get lower. Whereas if you started off the year making a wealthy income, chances are you're only going to get more wealthier. And they're not just pulling these numbers out. Once again, these are all statistical things. So these are numbers that have been crunched and factored to bring up that statement. It says that in Canada in 1989, the lowest quintile received 4.8% of their total income, and the highest quintile received 43%. So if you just take those two numbers, quintiles are like the percentages of how much each person will make, right? So I mean, 4.8% compared to the highest, which is 43, is a very big difference. I mean, you can imagine the person on the 4.8 perspective is probably really feeling it, right? Compared to the one who's making 43%, and that's the highest. Now in 2008, the poorest, which is 20% of the country, earned 4.2% of their total income. So that's what they got out of their total income. Whereas the richest received 20%, sorry, the rich 20% received 47.3%. So they went from 43% in 1989 to the jump of 2008. Now they're making 47. So if you kind of look at the stats, it's proving exactly what Statistics Canada was saying. If you start off with a wealth, it will increase. If you don't start off with the wealth, it will decrease, right? Because if you look back in 1989, the quintile received was 4.8% for the poorest or the lowest people. Now in 2008, the lowest is now 4.2%. And now the richest is 47.3%, whereas back in 1989, the richest received 43%. So it just goes to show how it's proving Statistics Canada's trend setting there. So it says household income for Canadian families or two or more was making 65,000 in 2010, whereas the lowest income was 15,000 and the top income was 171,900. And this is all in the year of 2010. So it just gives you a fluctuation to see how much each person was actually making. I mean, imagine the top 20%, which is generally our elite class because they're making the most, made $171,000, right? And then your middle class made 65,000, which was not too bad, and then you have your lowest income class making only about 15,000. So just the reason all I bring all these points up is just to show you that the money distribution it's a really harsh thing, because when you look at it, from what is seen, it looks like the poor don't really get the chance to make the money like the rich do, because like proven by Statistic Canada, if you start off wealthy, you end wealthy. If you start off poor, you end poor, basically, in a sense. So that's income distribution, and that's how it's been seen in Canada so far. Now there's income status. So we have four types of income status. You have low income cutoff, low income measure, LIM, market based measures, MBM, and the quintile, right? So low income cutoffs are families that spend at least 20 percentage points or more of their after tax income on food, clothing than the average family of the same size are counted as low income. Then you have low income measures, which is defines the low income Canadians as those living in families that have an after tax income lower than 50% of the median income of all Canadian families. Then you have market basket measures, which is estimates the cost of a specified set of goods and services in 48 geographic regions across Canada. And like I said before, the quintile, one of the five groups of households ranked by income. So now that we've talked about income distribution, we have to talk about the next most important fact, which is wealth distribution. So when you pull all that money in, where does all that money you have go? So for most people, one of the biggest assets is their house. So most people, their wealth goes into their house. Then comes smaller assets like RRSPs, pension funds, and also personally owned businesses that they might have, or like a cottage or something else that they can accumulate the wealth and throw it into. In 2009, Statistic Canada says that 3.8% of the country controlled 1.78 trillion. Just you have to just take in that statement for a second. 3.8% of the Canadian population controlled 1.78 trillion dollars. 1.78 trillion dollars, yeah. That's approximately 60. So when Statistics Canada looked into this, they said that's approximately 67% of the total wealth in Canada. So that just gives you that just gives you a little view of what I was saying before, where I said the elite class, it's really hard to be in that class, because if you really look at it, the elite class controls almost everything, right? That 3.8% is controls that 1.78 trillion. Those are made up of the elite high ends, whereas the rest of them, they just, I don't know where the rest of the money went. I guess I don't know, but I thought that was pretty cool. Since 1999, all Canadian families, whether rich or poor, has had an increase in wealth except for families in the lowest quintile. So yeah, like I was saying before, since 1999, everybody's gotten a jump except for the lowest families in the quintile. So those would be the lower end people on the scale. Based on the quintile ranking statistics, Canada has stated that there is an inequality in Canadian wealth distribution. I mean, well, from all the facts provided, we can definitely see that there's always been an inequality when it comes to distribution of the wealth. One of the main causes of inequality is because of the technical changes and increased globalization, as well as changing market force, which requires a higher skill of labor. So workers with high skill are earning the most right now compared to workers doing the same job just at a lower skill level. So a perfect example of this is welding. In this situation here, you have welding. Welding has always been a great trade that always paid a lot of money. But now the trade has gotten more advanced. So now you have above land welding and you also have underwater welding. Now both are doing literally the same job, welding the same pipe. It's just that because on one end of the spectrum the job is more advanced, one of the members is going to get paid more than the other. And so that's what the text was trying to say, that over time the jobs are starting to get more and more advanced. And because of that, the more advanced you get into it, the more pay you take home. So realistically, you would have two people doing the same job, but just because of the technical reasons, one gets paid more or one is required more than the other. Because you see, for example, you have the two welders there. Now I have above land welders and I have an underwater welder. Now the underwater welder is just as capable of welding above land as well underwater, rather than the above land welders, because the above land welders, they can only weld on land. They don't have the skill to weld underwater, whereas the underwater welder has the skill to do both of the trades. So in that case, when it comes to hiring now, I'm more prone to hire the underwater welder than I am to hire these two guys because of the fact that he can save me money because he can do both jobs. So then that puts the above land welders now out of a job because I have now a new guy who's more advanced. So as you can see, what the text is saying is because of the globalization, first of all, and the technicalities of jobs, people are losing it. I mean, now you have a nurse now, and then you have the registered nurse. So now people want to have I think it's RPNs. People want registered nurses over the normal nurses because a registered can do more. So it's always a fight for place now. I mean, I have a friend who says that all the time. So, I mean, this just goes to show how it's becoming more and more harder for people to get employment right now in Canada. Right? And then the reason two of the poverty right now is the increase in equality is due to increase in inequality is due to institutional forces such as declines in unionization rates, stagnating minimum wage rates, and policies such as tax breaks in favor of the wealthy. So now the next portion that we have to get to is how is poverty defined in Canada? So in Canada, poverty is measured by a person's income and how much they make. Poverty is broken down into transitional poverty, marginal poverty, and residual poverty. So transitional poverty is a temporary state of poverty that occurs when someone loses a job for a short time. So transitional poverty isn't that bad. It's kind of like if you get laid off or if you get fired or even if you just have to quit your job due to circumstances. It's only a temporary situation that puts you out of a job for a while. So it's still considered poverty because you're not making an income, but as well, it's only transitional. It's because you're doing a transition. Then there's marginal poverty, which is a state of poverty that occurs when a person lacks stable employment. So this poverty is more lengthy, and it's because the person literally cannot get employment. So at this point, it's a little more serious than transitional because you're without a job for a while. Then you have residual poverty. Is a chronic and multi-generational poverty. So residual poverty is like poverty passed down to generations. It's basically what the statistics was saying before was that if your parents were in poverty, you're more than likely to end up with poverty because they aren't able to pass anything down to you. So residual poverty is just a chronic multi-generational poverty. It's like a cycle. It goes down and down and down and down and down and down. So there's the cycle of poverty. This refers to the vicious cycle in which poor children are more likely to be poor adults. And again, residual poverty and cycle poverty do share something in common because both of these two kind of play hand in hand. Cycle poverty refers to, say, if your parents are poor, you're going to end up as poor as them because they didn't have anything to give you. And then there's feminization of poverty, which refers to the fact around the world that women experience poverty at a far higher rate than men, mainly just because of the fact that there's a lot of stigmas and a lot of reasons why women don't get jobs, whereas men will get jobs. And in a lot of different countries across the world, not just in Canada. Sorry, in Canada we're pretty good, but a lot of different countries across the world, women aren't seen as equal to men, therefore they don't get paid as equal to men. Thank God though. But for Canada, that's not really the case. But there is still specific cases where women don't really get the same jobs or same job opportunity or equality or fairness that they should be getting because of their state, which then puts them in a state of poverty. So this is just a song. This song was chosen by Tyla for this interview. I won't play the song now, but feel free to go look at it. She'll explain all about her song in her power. So power is another element that I was talking about way previously before in the slide. Now, power is a very important thing. Individuals have varying amounts of power between one another based on their wealth. Now, as human beings, we all know the more wealth you have, the more you accumulate, the more power you have. In the economic food chain, there's a small but powerful group called the power elites who are very wealthy, hence the reason they have so much power. So they're not just powerful because they were born, well, some of them were born in, but they're not just powerful because, it was ordained. No, these people are powerful because of their economic status. Because remember, when you're that 4.3% controlling 1.78 trillion, people will take time to listen to you because you have their money, right? So it's the same thing. These powerful elite groups, they own everything, right? And hence the reason they have so much power, because these are the people who own your small businesses. These are the people who own the franchises. These are people who own the brands. These are the people who own all these big end companies that build our economy here in Canada. So the elite group is broken down into three categories, such as the economic elite, state elite, and media elite. They decide what information and knowledge is shared with us. They also influence decision making in the country due to the fact that they hold the most of the due to the fact that they hold most of the country's money. So just like I was explaining before, just because they have the money, they're able to control so much. Then the next portion I was talking about was prestige. Now, prestige refers to the level of esteem associated with one's status and social standing. This is often tied to most jobs because based on what job you work determines how prestige you are seen. Based on the qualifications like level of education required, degree of autonomy required, importance of the job to the society, and the salary, those things make up your prestige. So to basically sum up that little paragraph there and make it a little more easier to understand, prestige is the nobility or the respect that comes with your job. So for example, a doctor will have more prestige over a tradesman. A tradesman will have more prestige over the McDonald's worker. The McDonald's worker will have more prestige over the homeless person. Because based on the job they do, the importance of the job, that's how they build that esteem in it and that respect. The doctor gets high prestige in his section of his job because he studied X amount of years at this school, he took X amount of tests, and he got a grade level of, I don't know, 80 or more. That built his prestige, hence why his job gives him high prestige. The job of a lawyer has high prestige because you studied at Harvard, you went to school for 5 years, you graduated with your master's or bachelor, and that's what gives you the prestige. The job at McDonald's now does not have as much prestige because you only had to get your high school diploma, you had to do a couple training videos, and then you were in. So if you understand how prestige works, it's just basically how people view the job. I mean, I know that paragraph breaks it down very serious, but to just sum it up in an easier way to understand, it's just explaining how people will view your job and how respectable they take it in a sense. So as we know, occupational prestige, also known as job ranking, is generally ranked on a scale from 0 to 100, 0 being the lowest, 100 being the highest. So, like, here's just a picture of some prestige jobs. For example, you have medical practitioners, judges, and lawyers, the prime minister himself, and all the people in their political positions. These are what we consider high prestige jobs. Now, social classes. Touched a little bit on social classes, but this is just going to get us a little deeper into social classes. So the upper elite class, like I was talking about, is the very top. This is a very small. This class is very small and holds a significant amount of wealth amongst each other. This class is considered to hold what they call old money, which is money passed down from generations to generations. So a common example that we can see is Donald Trump. He's what we would call he's what we would call the upper elite class because he's rich. He has a high income, a high wealth, and also what they call quote unquote old money, which is money from his father that was passed down and inherited by him. And when he goes now, he will leave his inheritance to whoever is below him, right? So that's part of being in the upper elite system, is that you have a lot of old money. And again, this is money that's just straight funneled through the system. So through different businesses owned, through different companies, you make all this money, and it's just passed down through the system again and again and again. Most people in this category have a high education of some sort, and the upper elite class average yearly income is a lot more than the middle and lower class. The upper elite often play a high role in society. Examples of elite people in Canada are the Molson family, Blackberry very own Jim Baisley, and some celebrities. Because remember, as I was saying before, there's the categories of media elite, social elite, and economic elite. So you still have those categories. So celebrities can also be considered upper elite because they pull in a gross income and they have a gross wealth. Now, the upper middle class consists of a high income member of society. So they're not rich and well off like the elite, but they're living comfortably like I said before. So the high income members of society who are well educated but do not belong to the elite members of the society who are abundantly wealthy. These people are in high positions and make a good enough salary that they can live a little more than comfortably. In this class, prestige is at a high level but not as high as the elite. So yeah, just not to go over it too much, but they have a lot of prestige like the elite, but they are not the elite. And they live very comfortably, or some would say almost more than comfortably. Then you have the middle class. So the middle class is made up of people with moderate incomes. They may have basic jobs like school workers, managers, supervisors, well-paid blue-collar workers like police officers and firefighters. Trade workers also like electricians do fall under this class as well as middle class. Most people within this class have a high school diploma as well as some sort of technical training or college credits. This class has a moderate amount of prestige. So in the middle class, you're not well off, but you work to make your pay. So you're somewhat educated. When I say somewhat, I mean at least a college degree or diploma of some sort. And these are more of the people within the community, your middle classers. So like your police officers, firefighters, all those kind of people, your trade workers, your carpenters, concrete layers, these all form the middle class because they pull in an income. It's not a gross income, but it's enough that they can survive and thrive, right? And most people within these classes get a moderate amount of prestige, not because of what they do, but just the fact that they're able to maintain this status, or they're able to maintain the middle ground. So they're not poor, but they're not rich, but they're just in the middle. So they get a little bit of prestige for making it there. Then you have the working class, which comes below. Now, this class is generally made up of people with only a high school diploma and lower levels of education. They often hold jobs that require manual labor or clerical skills. Factory workers, blue-collared workers make up most of this category. Members of this class don't receive a salary, but instead work at an hourly wage rate. Working in this class has very limited opportunities and doesn't allow for much advancement in your field. Unfortunately, there is next to no prestige in this class. So this is jobs like I was saying before, retail stores, what else? Retail, fast food, all these companies, basically any job that you work at a little hourly rate, these are the jobs that are considered working class. Now, tradesmen don't fall into working class because the rate that they make their money at is not your minimum wage rate, right? Now you have the lower class. The lower class is a notch under the working class in regards to feeling the crunch of money. So the lower class, you feel the crunch more. This is what a lot of people are tending to fall into because of the recession. People in this class work at an hourly rate as well, but at a more lower ended job, like a griller for a restaurant, or as a waitress, or as a as a waitress. This class generates the lowest annual income and has no prestige. So this is like really super low jobs now. Like I don't know, I don't know. I don't want to call out anybody's job, but lower end jobs, you know. And then there's the underclass. This class represents the homeless members of society. So that's no income. Other members of this group live in substandard housing or receive assistance from the government. Most members of this class don't have a high school diploma, and as well, if a job is obtained, it's a basic minimum wage job, and again, there's no prestige in this class. So again, when you look at the people of lower class and underclass, it's almost like society kind of just cuts them off because they are not given any prestige in whatever they do. Whether or not they are working as hard as the upper elite class, it doesn't matter because for some reason they don't obtain prestige. So as you can see already, not just is the wealth unequally distributed, not just as not only the wealth is unequally distributed, but as well the prestige or the respect that people give as well is unequally distributed. So you'll find that wealth and prestige also play hand in hand when it comes to what a person gets. So one of the basic activities that I wanted to do with the class, but of course we didn't get to, but you can do it for yourself, is the guess the class game. So I have 4 pictures here, and you have to guess which one of the, sorry, 4 pictures here, you choose which class each member of this society belongs to. Just to speed it up, so you have the construction worker, middle class, you have prime minister, which is upper class elite, not just upper class, but upper class elite. Then you have what they call the upper middle class here, which is a judge or a lawyer. Then you have lower class. So now we're going to move into a more important topic, which is social mobility. Social events such as the recent recession, corporate downsizing, and have sent many middle class families plummeting into poverty. Social mobility is basically your ability to move within the ranks. So, out of those 6 ranks that are provided, this is how you move within them. This explains the gradual transition between the ranks. So, it's not just a fall, but social mobility will explain how and why they fall. So for anyone who wants to know, the definition of social mobility is a term that describes this ability to change social classes. Horizontal mobility is the first one. It refers to moving within the same status or category. So horizontal mobility is, say, if I worked at a McDonald's and I wanted to get transferred to another McDonald's doing the same position. That's horizontal mobility, because you're not moving up the rank. I'm not moving from a McDonald's to a Swiss Chalet, but I'm moving from a McDonald's just to another McDonald's. So it's the same status category. You're just doing the same job somewhere else. Vertical mobility is the next move. This refers to the moving from one social status to another. So that would be like what I was saying. I go from working at McDonald's now to working at Swiss Chalet. From Swiss Chalet to working at Baton Rouge. I actually move from one social status to another social status to another. Then there's integration of mobility. This occurs when an individual changes a social standing, especially in the workforce. Sorry, my apologies. So from moving from Swiss Chalet to McDonald's, that's integration mobility, and vertical mobility is just moving from statuses. Now there's integrational mobility. It refers to the change that family members make from one social class to the next through generations. So again, it's the same idea of moving up. It's just through the generations of a family. So your mom and dad first came here. They worked little bad minimum wage jobs. For example, my parents came here as immigrants. When they came here, they didn't have any education, any standing. So my mom worked in a donut shop, and my dad didn't work. He was going to school at the time to move up his rank in the social mobility ladder. So that's a perfect example. You work minimum wage jobs. Then my parents had children, which was me. And now I'm going to school to study to be a social service worker, so I can move up the social mobility rank, and I can move up from going to lower end transitional jobs to maybe middle class jobs. Structural mobility occurs when a social changes affect a large number of people. So structural mobility can be like, say, now we're not talking about person to person per se, but maybe neighborhoods. So you have one neighborhood that's really low income, you have another neighborhood that's really high income. That's structural mobility. Maybe one neighborhood moves to a higher set of income. That's how you have structural mobility. And then there's the last one, which is exchange mobility, is a concept which suggests that within a country, each social class contains a relatively fixed number of people. Okay. So here's just a social mobility fun fact, and that is that when the economy heads into a recession, workers who have lost their jobs outsourcing experience, sorry, workers head into a recession. Sorry, let me just start that all over. So when the economy heads into a recession, workers who have lost their jobs outsourcing experience downward structural mobility. So when you lose your job, you start going downward because you like I said, no income moves. When you have no income now, that moves your social class down. When your social class goes down, that moves your class down, and it's just a vertical downward motion from there. Canada's business executives see outsourcing as one of the best ways to reduce the cost, but for workers such as RBC who lost their jobs to temporary foreign workers, the result can be devastating. So there are factors that influence social class in Canada, which is functionalism, conflict theory, feminist theory, and symbolic interactionism. My bad. So from the functionalist perspective, functionalism suggests that social class is connected to a person's ability to negotiate the social world. Conflict theory. Conflict theorists believe that social mobility rarely occurs in a dramatic way, largely because the Canadian system doesn't allow it. The feminist theory is feminization of poverty is the term used to describe the fact that women are far more likely than men to experience poverty. And the symbolic interactionism is that social class and our understanding of it are relative to our personal belief system. Now, that one I personally agree with most because, again, like I was saying, you have the two different classes. You have the guy at the very top who's the upper elite, and then you have the lower ended class. The guy in the lower ended class probably works twice as hard as the guy in the upper elite class, but yet gets paid less. So that's why I agree with symbolic interactionism. Just saying. The song of choice. Now, this is my personal song of choice. It was written by J. Cole. It's called "Love Yours." Now, it was very hard to find a song that specifically deals with social statuses, just because it's hard to find. But if you listen to this song, I'll explain what in it exactly, you know, makes me feel that it could be used for this presentation. Because in the song, if you look at what's being said, um, just listen to the slideshow after you listen to the song, so that way I don't give away everything to you. So if you want, just pause it right now, listen to the song first and the video. Make sure you watch the video because it really explains a lot, and then come back and play the slideshow, so that way I can explain it after, so you know you've seen everything already. But I'm just gonna say it like you already saw it. So yeah. So in the video, as you can see, there is a kid now. The kid isn't the kid. The video starts off with the kid walking up to a bunch of people on the block, and he's just like, "Hey, you know, I want to hang." And they say, "No, you can't hang with us," base because they look at his shoes, they look at him, they look at how he's dressed, and they pass him along. And then, as you can see, as the young man gets back to his home or his residence, you see that where he lives isn't exactly the high-end place either. His neighborhood's a little more shabbier than the kids up the block. But as you can see in his house, his parents are clearly not of the elite class or the upper class or even the middle class. His parents look like they fall more in the lower class, right? Just trying to work and get by day to day to put him through. And then, as you can see on the other spectrum of the video, there's the kid who wouldn't allow the poorer kid to hang out with them. He goes home now, and as you can see, he's clearly of a different class. He's of probably of the not upper elite. I wouldn't say middle class, but yeah, maybe the upper middle class, I would say. Not because it's not upper elite either. It's yeah, I'd say he's of the upper middle class. You can see that clearly his house is a lot larger than the other boys, and his parents make a lot more, and it's shown throughout the video. So that just goes to show the two classes. And as you can see, as the video goes on, you see that there's a time progression, and the young man who was in poverty, he grows up now, and he's created a new social status for himself because he's no longer that young man in poverty. Clearly now he's working, he's developing an income, developing some sort of wealth that allows him to have a house and a home. Now to prove what the theory was saying was that although he's now developed a new social status and a new name for himself, it does go back to what the statistics were saying, because although he's done that, he was not rich. He still had a poverty. There was still a bit of poverty going on for him, right? As expressed in the song when the rapper says, or sorry, as when you're watching the music video, you see that he's looking on the TV and he's seeing the upper elite class with the golden diamond watch and all that, and he's kind of stressed because he's not there yet. But that just goes to show, when you start off in poverty, statistics have proven that you end in poverty. But I mean, it doesn't mean you can't change your social class. That's not a gridlock, but it's just a statistic, right? And if you know anything about statistics, they can always be proven wrong. So those are just some of the reasons why I think this video can kind of relate to the subject of social status, because social status is not just what's on paper or what's in pen or what's written in the books. Social status also has what they call the social aspect of it. People, when they know you don't have a high income, when they know you don't have a high wealth, will look at you a certain way, will judge you a certain way. So never mind the numbers and statistics, Canada and upper class, lower class, middle class, and the 4.3%. Never mind all of that. Let's just keep it basic. Once people see that you're not of a high social status, it brings everything else around you down, right? So I believe that's how that's how this music video here can tie into what we're learning right now, right? And the last part is the social policy. So it's welfare for the poor. Now, in Canada, you might expect that in a country with such values, everyone would be taken care of. But unfortunately, sorry, and no one would really be poor. But the truth is that some people in Canada do suffer from poverty a lot. Now, because we live in Canada, people like to state that, well, this is a first world country and there's no way to be poor in this country because we have so many systems and so many organizations set up to act as a safety net for if you fall. But I have personally worked within placement with marginally housed elderly men who can't find housing because they don't have income, right? And I will tell you right now, there is systems, yes, in place for Canada. There is a lot of organizations in place, but they still need a lot of work. A lot of these systems still have holes in them that haven't been filled yet, and that's even what the textbook is saying. Is these are still developing systems in our social makeup, right? So yes, there are those that benefit and could benefit and don't take advantage, but there are those who are simply victims of the system sometimes. And then there's social policy on minimum wage. So when you were in high school, your first job might have been at McDonald's, Wendy's, a grocery store, a superstore, any store, right? Many of us have probably held a minimum wage job at some point, but who are really minimum wage workers? In 2008, more than 750,000 Canadians at worked below minimum wage. That's representing 5.2% of Canadian workers. Can you imagine? That's 750,000 people. That doesn't even gender specific age really. That they didn't even give us an age, so that could be right across the board of Canadians working under minimum wage, right? And then 60% of women workers earn minimum wage. That's 60%. So I mean, it's even worse from a woman's perspective because they don't get the same wage. Only about 35% of teens aged 15 to 19 worked for a minimum wage. So that's 35%. So you have to wonder if there's 750,000 Canadians working below minimum wage, working these low end jobs, and it's only 35% of teens aged 15 to 19 that are working that, then who else is working under the below rate? And if it's older people, more than likely they don't have a chance of getting up there in their field because they're stuck at these jobs. And that concludes our entire presentation. Now, unfortunately, Tyler was not able to talk because she is currently getting over a sickness when I was doing this. But Tyler did come through with the slideshow. She definitely helped me on all the PowerPoints. So I mean, she didn't exactly get to present, but she did help me.